use the word emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and,
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 987.PS8207. Certificate number 50227. The Prince Philip Movement.
I would like to discharge a debt of gratitude to the citizens of Edinburgh for your hospitality to myself and to thousands of other servicemen who managed to get here for a few hours' relaxation during the war. I know we were a dreadful nuisance and frequently misbehaved.
Usually when we say the word movement on this show, we're
Talking about potties.
We're plugging one of those toilets that we love.
Yeah.
10% off.
I hope that's not what this is about, because
It is.
picturing
It's about Prince Philip's last bowel movement.
Prince Philip, picturing him at any time in his career going to the potty.
He probably never did.
Actually, he's pretty elegant. Maybe his potty habits are fun to watch.
And there's certainly a history in the British royal family of having someone to keep an eye on the royal movements and report.
Oh, right. They use toothpicks or not toothpicks, chopsticks.
Like canopies?
And say like, oh, yes, you've been eating, you have enough vitamin D.
The Hanoverian doctors were wanted to check out the color and consistency of the royal poos.
Isn't it pronounced Hanoverian? That would be Queen George III. Did they figure out from the poos whether he was suffering from a malady and whether or not that affected the course of the American Revolutionary War, thereby bringing America into existence?
Probably. Well, he was crazy.
Yes. Well, we don't use
we
that
don't
word
use the word anymore. He had
His poop was crazy.
He had some probably spottily diagnosed mental illnesses.
Right.
That's what we say.
That's what it says.
He needed a therapist.
Yeah, or
less mercury in his water.
That's
or something.
I think closer. Yeah, he needed a psychopharmacologist.
No, this show is about movement in the religious sense, like the movementarians.
Oh,
Like the
I thought you were going to talk about the tectonic plates, the Prince Philip tectonic plates.
like there probably is some massif in Greenland or in Antarctica named for Prince Philip.
It could also
And
be
it can move slowly.
It could also be a social justice movement.
Not from Prince Philip. He is famous for saying
He's a little racist, isn't he?
Well, the things
Was.
that often make the headlines. Well, he passed away this year. We're recording this in the summer of the year of Prince Philip's death. The longtime consort of Queen Elizabeth,
Longtime fan of the show.
fan of the pod. He's here with us today. Please welcome Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, back from the dead. He often makes headlines for saying things that are antiquated,
Right.
old-fashioned, racist or racist adjacent. But if you read
Nothing to do with him being 100 years old.
and looking 200 years old. But if you read a lot of his quotes, you really just find it's not necessarily evidence of somebody whose core beliefs are, say,
Right.
white supremacy. It's just the actions of someone who has always been able to say whatever he wanted and cannot be told not to
Right.
because he's the Duke of Edinburgh.
Kind of like Joe Biden.
Exactly. Here's Prince Philip, his comment about a Madonna concert he was going to have to go to. Are we going to need earplugs? Not a fan of Madonna.
Right. I get that.
He didn't go to a ton of Madonna concerts. This is when she sang the theme to Die Another Day, I think. You know the weird way that the royal family is bound up in British popular culture?
Yeah, they have to see the Beatles
They
every
have to
time.
pretend to love the Rolling Stones and Bond movies and Guy Ritchie.
But this wasn't from Madonna's late 90s resurgence and her hit album Music, I'm guessing.
It's probably post-music. Die Another Day is, I believe, 2002.
Oh, Music
So-
was a great record. Let's just go on record.
But you can
and say.
see why the techno influences on music maybe do not accord with Prince Philip's
Sure.
Greco-Nordic ideas of good music, right?
Did Sacha Baron Cohen come out as Ollie G?
If you read his obituaries, he was just it's funny, they call him the prince consort, I guess.
Yeah.
And because consorts in Western culture and these patriarchal societies are usually female, consort has come to have this kind of a sexual connotation.
Right.
Like it's like almost like a concubine. He's consorting with loose women.
Oh, does it not?
Well,
I never knew another
well, in
way
his
of
case,
saying it.
it's just the name for the spouse of the
Ruler.
of the monarch,
Right.
who does not necessarily have a co-monarchical status, right? So he was officially the consort. So I guess you could consort with him if you're into that.
Anyone who's watched The Queen, the fabulous miniseries,
You always call it the queen,
what is it called?
the crown.
The Crown. Anyone who has watched The Queen knows that it is a great television, and B, now you realize everything about Prince Philip, and you're
It's a
glad
rough
that he's
life.
not your father.
Do you think you would? He's rough dad. Do you think you would have an easy life? The point that the show makes about Prince Philip over and over is that it's rough to just be a total responsibility-less appendage to a powerful woman, especially for a man of that generation.
I think to be rich, the only value in being rich is to be able to go do whatever you want. And he can't. And what's weird about American capitalists is that they all seem to feel, or at least the ones that are in the newspaper all the time, they all seem to feel obligated to, I don't know, continue to go to work every day, to sit in an office and actually make decisions about their dumb products. Like, if you're a billionaire, what are you doing? Like, buy a dirigible, fly around the world throwing Reese's peanut butter cups down at, do something, have a good time.
If you're a movie star, why are you on Twitter?
It would be so much more entertaining if everybody pulled the Bill Murray and just showed up at other people's weddings. I think it would be more inspiring to young, nascent capitalists, young people who are going into business, if American business people went bonkers instead of being such drudges.
Do you think Prince Philip should just be coming up to people at bars and sports events and trying to hang out with them?
Well, he can't, because
He's a rich person who can do literally nothing he wants to
he
do.
can do nothing. And in the early episodes of The Queen / The Crown,
In other markets called The Crown.
he does
Other markets besides your house.
He does keep going to like his men's club where they sit and drink and say and do what they want.
And
But-
ambiguously have affairs because the show does not want to be sued.
right. And then the kibosh gets put on that too.
He in modern era, late 20th century royal family, the theme was always cost cutting. So he's an even worse kind of rich person who kind of is forced to be a bit ascetic in the public eye, and as a result is always caught on mic complaining about how he might have to give up half of his polo ponies.
Right. And all those castles are cold and creaky, and the carpets are all full of dander. It just doesn't seem. I bet you he sleeps in slept in a twin bed, and I bet you the mattress belonged to his father-in-law. Like, when was the last time they changed the mattresses in Buckingham Palace? I bet it was the 70s.
This guy is always caught during his lifetime. He was always caught on hot mics, just saying whatever, because his one outlet is just nobody can correct any dumb thing he says in any state visit or whatever.
Right. Get it out.
He, a lot of his obituaries mentioned his one great legacy, which is, maybe the only thing he ever did on his own initiative or that had his name on it was the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, which I had never heard of, but it's a series of,
Like comedy bloopers.
sports bloopers.
It's like the Razzies,
He
the worst
just-
actor.
He just loved sports bloopers, and he put out a series of VHS tapes. Him and David Beckham. It's essentially the president's physical fitness test, but I guess it started out for young British boys in the 50s and was later broadened, I assume, over his objections to young girls as well.
Right.
Where it's just got a series of, ranks and advancements you get for certain kind of achievements in community service and learning a skill and helping an old person make dinner. Or
Can you sit in a cold bath while your schoolmates hit you with cricket bats?
all those important British skills.
Yeah.
But even though the fact that this was his great gift to the nation, his quote about his own Duke of Edinburgh awards that he gave once at a steering meeting was, "Young people are the same as they always were, just as ignorant." And many of them do border on racist. In the 80s, in 1986, visiting China, he spoke to a British student there. He said, "If you stay here much longer, you will go home with slitty eyes,"
Oh, yeah.
which you probably don't want to say.
Not now.
Or not in 1986.
86, boy, he could get away with
You
a
think
lot
it was
more.
on the cusp?
I mean, there were some movies about like the American car industry that were. I mean, that 86 is the
Oh, yeah. That's the height of anti-Japanese racism.
yeah,
for
that's
sure.
the year of Long Duck Dong.
Right. But rare to have a world leader saying things
Yeah.
like that on, at a
Yeah,
where there's news cameras. And he didn't stop there. In 1994, visiting the Cayman Islands, he wondered aloud, "Aren't most of you descended from pirates?" In the 21st century, meeting with an Australian Aboriginal leader, an occasion when presumably he would have been briefed on sensitivity and things not to say, he could not help saying, "Do you still throw spears at each other?"
Mm-hmm. What was the response? Forced smile, or did he hit him?
I assume the guy, made a mental note to plan some kind of a sand painting that was also a curse on the hand on
Right,
the
take-
Windsor's forever.
Take him off the Tongan money.
Right. There's gender issues as well. To a female British sea cadet, he was chatting with at an event once. She told him she worked at a nightclub, and he immediately said, "Oh, is it a strip club?"
Sure.
I don't believe it was a strip club. A young British boy once told him he wanted to be an astronaut, and Prince Philip looked at him appraisingly and said, "You could do with losing a little weight."
Sure.
So this is just, you can't take him anywhere. And yet, if the Queen of England has to take him everywhere.
Yes.
And for 50 years, he just said delightfully dumb things.
Yeah, walks 2 feet behind her and in most cases is not invited to speak.
Right. And maybe he gets sent in her place at certain things.
I bet that's right.
But the impression I think that the Crown gives is all, or the Queen, sorry, the impression that the television series The Queen gives of him is kind of shared by the press, which is that he always chafed at this role of being a second banana, especially to a woman. Let's see, he was 99 when he died this year, so he would have been born in the 20s. An old-fashioned man who had to come to terms with the fact that he was never going to do or be or amount to anything.
Well, an old-fashioned European aristocrat who, yeah, right. I mean, he would have been challenged even if he'd been born in the 1970s, just based on his access to motorboats and baccarat tables.
He was born Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, so
Yeah.
you presume he has some of the Southern European attitude towards women as well.
That was when all the royal houses were all basically Germans, right? I mean, he's only a prince of Greece because his mother was some fallen Habsburg.
But we've had several requests on the show to cover an unusual element of Prince Philip's biography, of which he actually became aware and which he probably enjoyed.
Now, wait, before we get there, when we come over to dinner, it's clear that the attraction is Mindy and that you are just sort of there as her consort.
Oh, that's true.
How would you feel? How much would you chafe if you were Mindy Jennings's consort? If you were, what's Mindy's maiden name?
Bohm.
If you were Mr. Bohm Jennings,
Mr. Mindy Bohm.
Mr. Mindy Bohm, how long before you chafed? I think I would chafe.
I don't know. Does it come with all the...
Not even because she's a woman, but just to be the... I mean, I already chafe at being your second banana when you and I go to baseball games and you throw out the first pitch and I don't.
You just have to sit in your free seats that you got from calling a higher up.
Yeah, but not because of you. I called a rock and roll higher up. Yeah, but I sit and kind of go, for
I assume it must be difficult, and I just assume that from my experience speaking to people who have been in that position. Mindy has a friend of ours actually has a couple friends who have wanted to confide in her about, what it's like to have to, what happens to your identity when suddenly you have a spouse with some unexpected level of status or fame or prestige.
Yeah.
And Mindy's quite untouched by the whole thing, and she always just kind of blinks and says sympathetic things.
Right.
because she has never thought, boy, what an ordeal it is to have an accomplished spouse. But many people do. We have a friend who was recently profiled in a magazine piece and had a spouse that was quite upset that the spouse's accomplishments were not recognized.
Yeah, I feel like that happens a lot. I have a few friends who are famous, and their spouse resents that their vanity project isn't held in as great esteem.
And you do see a lot of these vanity projects.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld's wife's cookbooks, I'm sure, are fantastic.
Yes, right.
But and it's good that she's finally graduated from high school.
I do remember one time at your house when you asked somebody to pass you the ketchup bottle or whatever, and it took a little bit of time, or somebody took time to get it to you, and you said, I paid for that ketchup. And it felt very much like you were asserting,
50s dad.
Yeah, you were like, you know what? No one would have any ketchup if it weren't for me.
You need to be thinking about me on a game show every time you add ketchup to your hot dog. Let's be frank. I don't know. I don't know. Would that be I feel like if it came with all the money and comfort,
But if you couldn't go boating and you had to sleep on your dad's mattress, there's no comfort. There's no freedom or comfort.
That's very specific to Prince Philip.
Yeah.
If I had married into money and I was just a trophy husband in America,
yeah,
I don't know that I would mind.
Yeah,
I'd be an odd choice, though.
I suppose you're right. I mean,
why me again?
I still feel like if Jennifer Lawrence wants to marry like an older guy and have him just around to say funny things, I'm available.
It's happening in Seattle. Now that Melinda Gates and Mackenzie Bezos are newly single in Seattle,
Do you have their numbers?
She fairly quickly got re-engaged to just a teacher at the kids' nice Seattle private school.
Right.
This is some of my friends' kids' chemistry teacher.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's going to be Mr. Mackenzie Bezos.
Oh, Captain, my captain.
And he immediately quit. He's not teaching there anymore.
But I bet you he signed a prenup.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But I assume all the faculty were really.
Yeah.
I wonder what the discussions in the break room were like. Everybody updating their picture on the website.
Right. On their Tinder.
And now that Melinda's single again, there's probably a lot of that going on. Oh, I guess maybe their kids are not in high school anymore. I can't remember how old their youngest is.
Oh, older, I think.
Yeah. So.
But she's got to be hitting the bars. Maybe she likes indie rock.
Yeah, I don't know. What are
I got a lot going on.
What are your qualifications?
I got a lot going on. Well, I mean, I think if a trophy husband, I cut a dashing figure. But
would you have a royal title like Prince Philip? Would you be like the Duke of Ballard or something?
Yeah, the Duke of Ballard. Please not the Duke of Ballard. Please not Ballard or West Seattle.
The Duke of Burien.
Yeah, I'll be the Duke of Burien.
But getting to what made Prince Philip a movement, we need to kind of move the lens from Buckingham Palace or Balmoral or whatever, all the way across almost to the exact antipodal point on the Earth's surface. We head now to sunny Vanuatu in the South Pacific. It's in Melanesia, somewhat east of New Guinea near Fiji.
It did not occur to me that this was an antipode, but now that you say it, wow, the actual antipode has to be fairly close.
It's a little south of there. Spain and New Zealand are almost precisely antipodal. I don't know if it's antipodal or antipodal.
The sun never sets on the British Empire, or at least it didn't.
The sun has continued to not set on the British Empire, I believe. They're going to have to lose a few more possessions, I think. I don't know. I'll just assert that and let someone correct me.
There's just something over there, some atoll by the international date line.
Yeah, they've got some dot in the South Atlantic. Alex, all it takes is, the sun's shining over, half the Earth at once. So
right.
It just takes a dot in the South Atlantic and a dot in the South Pacific, and you're pretty good. The Vanuatu was formerly known as the New Hebrides for most of the 20th century, when it was both France and Britain had claimed colonial ownership of it, probably much to the surprise of the people who had actually lived there for centuries. But as a result, they didn't fight over it. They ran it jointly through an Anglo-French condominium, which is what it's called when two nations share sovereignty of a territory, and presumably also maybe a pool and some tennis courts.
Yes,
if it's a
right.
condominium. And Melanesia is the site of the 20th century religious movement that we still call cargo cults.
Oh, we finally get to cargo cult, which has been on our list of topics from the very dawn of the omnibus.
I always thought cargo cults was a funny name. Cargo is kind of a term of art on these islands to refer to all advanced, technologically advanced to them, Western goods and paraphernalia.
Everything that would have arrived in a DC-3 in 1942 as part of defeating the Japanese.
And that makes sense. To them, it was cargo.
Yeah.
And to them, that just means good stuff. And not just good stuff, but like stuff with magical properties.
Watches and then later microwave ovens.
These were remote island people with very little contact with the outside world, with the industrialized world. And suddenly they have front row seats to the most technologically advanced war ever fought on Earth, and all its amazing, all the amazing infrastructure that comes with waging an island hopping war. First, they saw the Japanese move in and, bulldozers to build airstrips and planes and
giant
ships, canned foods,
right?
Houses made of metal. I don't know what the Japanese equivalent of a Quonset hut is, and then following the Japanese, they saw the Americans come in with the same stuff.
All that daring do. We didn't have daring do. We had gumption. That's what we had.
We beat the Japanese just with gumption.
We did. We had gumption in the form of better canned food and bigger metal houses.
And the gumption bomb. So this was psychologically formative for these remote people.
Wow, I bet.
Can you imagine you're living in basically a Stone Age, Stone Axe kind of a culture, and suddenly you jump straight from there to aircraft carriers.
Right. You would have seen airplanes periodically fly over, and they would have been high up and, sounded like a buzzing thing.
So that becomes kind of a magical totem to you. And then you have to fit them into your myths.
Right. And then maybe a ship off in the far distance that you couldn't quite gauge. But then all of a sudden, like not just all this technology, but just foreign people that don't look like you, people that have other language and foreign customs. And if you imagine a military, because it wouldn't just be like missionaries. Hi, try our canned peaches. It would be.
And a lot of these people stayed away from all those. These were the tribes that were not interested in any of these stuff from the Age of Sail. And, they had heard stories about what the missionaries were trying to do to the local customs. They tried to steer clear.
But when the Japanese army shows up, it's not optional. You don't welcome them. They don't care.
That's actually the motto of the Japanese army. When we show up, it's not optional.
So yeah, profound.
For us, it would be the equivalent of first contact with some advanced alien culture.
Right.
That
had canned peaches that were good.
It's a point that's often made in science fiction, is that there would be profound religious repercussions to a society suddenly having to adjust to extraterrestrial life. And that's essentially what happened in the 30s and 40s on a lot of these little islands of Polynesia and Melanesia. There were religious repercussions to suddenly being firsthand witnesses to a larger world. And they were not wrong. A lot of this stuff was really good. Like the canned food, they probably had a hard scrabble life on some of these islands. And suddenly now they have Spam for the first time, and it's salty and delicious.
Sure. Band-Aids.
They have Band-Aids. They have better shovels than the ones they've been making out of rocks. Mm-hmm. All these things make life better. And so far from, oh boy, this is trouble. It's like, hey, these odd-looking people with their magical, noisy sky things have great gifts for us.
Yeah.
And so for many years, even after the war...
And they were almost certainly bribed with those gifts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I should not use gift in the sense of how benevolent the Japanese and American armies no doubt were to these native peoples. For years thereafter, they kind of wanted it back. They would build ceremonial airstrips in hopes that
planes would land.
Planes would land, bringing all the amazing stuff they used to back in the day. They would build things out of coconuts, like the professor on Gilligan's Island. They would use coconuts and palm fronds to build things that looked like radios just like they saw the American and Japanese soldiers using to call for new and better stuff.
Oh, that's a little heartbreaking.
It's not coming back. Stuff's not coming back. And if it does come back, technology coming to these remote tribes doesn't always happen in benevolent or culture preserving ways. So you kind of want to wave them off and be like, no, you guys are good.
And by not
go back
always,
by the volcano.
By not always, you mean never.
I can't think of a case.
But then weren't these the sites of like nuclear test programs, or was that further out in the...
I mean, there were whole islands that would have been resettled because the American government decided, hey, good news, we've decided to blow up your atoll. But there's not a lot of, the thing about these very remote tribes, each on their little island, is that there's not a lot of shared knowledge.
Right.
Today, our story is set on the island of Tanna, part of Vanuatu. And these villagers now live just a few miles from the airport, but there is a huge metaphysical, if not geographical, distance from the 21st century. They prefer to still wear the old grass skirts and live in the houses on stilts and eat the old ways and hunt pigs with the stone-tipped spears and practice the old religions. They are not interested in modernity. Money rarely gets used. Cell phones rarely get used.
Was there anything in, sort of like characteristic of the religious practices, pre-contact religious practices that kind of made it easier for this contact to inspire?
It's hard to say because often the first time we know of the first Western contact with these remote indigenous peoples, that changes the ballgame. Suddenly, now their stories are all bound up with our stories.
I would think it would have been whalers, or there would have been a 19th century contact. I mean, didn't whale ships like land on every exposed rock?
I wouldn't be surprised because the specific myth that leads to the Prince Philip movement does include elements of pale-skinned people and travel to faraway places over the waves. So it does seem like there is some cultural memory of earlier contacts. But, by the time we hear about the people of Tanna, this little Vanuatuese island, they are already just super into, there's a movement to this, one of the largest cargo cults on the island, in any of these islands today, is on the island of Tanna. It is not the Prince Philip movement. That's kind of an offshoot. This one is called the John Frum movement, F-R-U-M. John Frum being kind of a mythical American guy who shows up in their visions.
How is Froome an typical American name?
There is some discussion about where the name came from. Nobody knows if there is an John who actually did make some original contact with these people, thus leading to all this lore. There's some speculation that it might just be a shortening of John from America. Or John from somewhere else.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Who are you? I'm John from America.
John from. There's also the fact that because there's no B in the language spoken there, Froome, F-R-U-M, is also the local word for broom. So it may be John Broom with some kind of sweeping power to cleanse or bring restoration or something.
Spam. I like the John Froome is just John Froome America story. That's the one I'm going to go with.
What if he just said where he was actually from? Yeah. John Froome, Akron.
Yeah.
And they immediately forgot the Akron part.
Froome Ballard. And they're like, we hate Ballard too.
But to this day, that is a large religious movement on the island, is people with this memory of a powerful spirit who took the form of an American named John Froome and has made certain promises to come back. There are members of the John Froome cult in the Vanuatu Parliament. This is not So you imagine these as all, remote, uncontacted tribes, but the John Froome movement has survived modernity.
And you can see a guy, stationed there during the war. It seems kind of like paradise. And as they're pulling out, he says, "I'm coming back. I'll see you again. I promise I'll come back.
And everyone's very excited.
And they're like, he's coming back.
The guy that brought us the shovels and the ham says he's going to come back.
Yeah, and then never does.
What a loser.
They stand by they watch the sun sink into the ocean. Or rise up out of the ocean, I guess.
He never has any idea. He's back home in
Akron.
Yeah, in Akron. He remembers the good times he had with, the exotic birds and the lovely young girls in the jungles of the South Pacific.
It's very hard to get back to Tana during the 1950s.
Then the New Hebrides. And so the stories just circulate without him. But there's a small village on Tana called Yaonanen, which has a variant of the John Frum cargo cult, which is fixated not on this mythical American GI type figure, but on no less than Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh.
Our hero arrives on the scene.
It's hard to say what the origin of this religious movement is, but there appears in this village to have been a very specific belief that there was the son of an ancient mountain spirit, who lived in the mountains above the village, who, manifested himself to them as a pale-skinned man, who told them that he was going to travel. His destiny was to travel abroad, to leave the island, to go to foreign shores, to marry a powerful lady.
Yes.
And then to return.
Sounds exactly like Prince Philip.
When I hear that story, I'm like, well, they're clearly talking about Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh.
Right.
It's hard to say how much that story has been changed by the subsequent seeing it through the lens of Prince Philip's career. But in a vague way, there was a story about a lighter than them guy.
Yeah.
With who marries a goddess or another powerful spirit over the waves.
I mean, anytime you go to a fortune teller, they're going to tell you that a light-skinned guy has been trying to contact you.
Those are the two elements, right? There's a connection with a new stranger.
Yeah.
Maybe a love match, and travel over water, right?
Right.
Those are the two things. And so those are both present in this legend. And because there is at this village, there is apparently some tradition adjacent to that. In the 1960s, due to the Anglo-French condominium then running New Hebrides, there were pictures of Queen Elizabeth everywhere. That was the thing about a crown colony.
Sure. And 1960s, that was peak Queen Elizabeth in her crown.
Yes. And she would be pictured, she would be on the money. She was
pretty. This was before her kids were a disgrace.
Right. She would just be she'd be on magazine covers with her beautiful children. And often she has next to her gallant husband.
Draped in medals.
He's a military hero. He's draped in medals. And I feel like we spend a lot of this show talking about older, hideous men and how hot they were when they were younger. But Prince Philip is a good-looking man.
He's good. He's very white.
Strong jawline, kind of a regal-looking, a substantial nose. He was always balding, even, I think, when they were first married.
But it's a good look on him, whereas...
it's distinguished.
It's a good look on Prince Philip, where it isn't on Prince Rainier of Monaco. Right? Like Prince Philip, seems dashing, seems like somebody that might have sword fighting scars, whereas Prince Rainier always, seemed like a guy that should be selling you hard salami.
But, if you're in the island of Tana in the 1960s, you don't see pictures of a lot of Caucasian people. The one you see over and over would be Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. And the fact that he has married this woman she's wearing a crown and he's not. She's always a little more glamorous and dressed a little more regally than him.
Right, sitting front.
It clearly conveys the message that, this is a light-skinned man who has married a powerful woman in a faraway place. And this village becomes convinced in a cargo cult kind of way that Prince Philip is a kind of savior who will return to them as the legends have prophesied.
Now, Prince Philip was in the Royal Navy and transited the world, but he never came close to... Did he land in New Zealand? He may have, right?
He had never been to Vanuatu. I believe, yes, visits to Australia and New Zealand. Maybe this is after his marriage to Elizabeth in the late 40s. But in fact, he had not visited Vanuatu until the 1970s. So they are just obsessed with the return of someone who has never actually been there. And in fact, there is it's important to the legend that this is actually somebody from the island who will go away, have success in the other world, and then come back. So it's not that he's an outsider who will come to them and bless them. It really kind of turns colonialism on its head by saying this great white father who has his pictures on all the stamps and stuff, he's actually one of us.
Huh.
He represents our costume, their culture, their way of life. And so, and he's over there doing good work, but bringing our way of life to the other parts of the world. And in 1974, Prince Philip did actually visit with Queen Elizabeth, Vanuatu, then the New Hebrides. And being Prince Philip, he drank a lot of kava, the local, kind of the mild local narcotic from a pepper plant, which I think leads to a lot of these spiritual experiences that birthed some of these cargo cults.
He's not above sitting crisscross applesauce in a around a fire with people.
Not if there's going to be kava.
Yeah, right.
I'll tell you that. There's a local warrior of this village named John Niva who hears about the royal visit and heads to the coast, and he sees on a boat, he sees Prince Philip, whom this village has already decided is kind of a local hero, standing on the deck of whatever the visiting Royal Navy ship was in his dress whites. And that's an impressive sight.
Yes.
This guy in this all white uniform, almost angelic. I knew then that he was the true Messiah. So this John Niva goes back to his village and says, you know what? It's all true. I've seen the guy. He is our guy. And John Niva becomes the chief of this village, and this village becomes all about Prince Philip.
And is there, it sounds like the Christian missionaries have been there. And so this is like you kind of almost went into a little bit of pidgin as you were describing their reaction. Like these are not still uncontacted people. They have an English patois. They have experience with the Messiah, with Western ideas.
Yeah. Cargo is a pidgin term. In fact, it's they don't use it to mean stuff in the belly of a ship or an airplane like we do. That just means all the good gifts. And the same with, this is very much a village and an island that has been shaped by generations of missionary contact. And this is a reaction to that.
Right.
This is this is the local home. This isn't one of the weird Christianizing things that the missionaries were always, because the missionaries were always telling them, you got to change all your stuff. Don't do the kava rituals.
Right.
The women have to wear tops. All the polygamy's got to stop. I don't know what you're eating, but it looks gross.
None of those appeal to Prince Philip at all. He wants no one to wear tops. Like, eat whatever you want.
He wants kava and Nubile Island women, I'm sure.
Okay.
And more to the point, they have recast him not as a visitor, but as a product of this island.
Right.
This is their guy. And unlike the faraway religious figures, and often when the village was asked about their odd beliefs in subsequent decades, Niva would say, look, you guys have been waiting for Jesus for 2,000 years.
Sure.
We
actually got Prince Philip.
Prince Philip came, and we can wait a few decades for him to come back. That is not a problem. So they see this as a reaction to the kind of the missionary proselytization and cultural changes of their island. Prince Philip learns a couple years later, after this royal visit, the resident commissioner of the island, the equivalent of the governor or whatever, tells the palace, hey, there's this village that is super into.
Oh, he didn't know it when he visited in the first place.
No, he was glimpsed from afar. He's just being shuttled from visit to visit. And he has kava with some tribal elders, but he doesn't know there's some village that's super into him.
Right.
And as you can imagine, for this overlooked man who feels like his destiny has gone unmet, he loves the idea, presumably, that this village is into him.
I would love the idea too, but I would prefer that it be a town in Western British Columbia.
You would prefer that it's someplace that has a nice vacation home you could use.
Yeah, that's right. If it was on the San Juan Islands, if there was, if San Juan or East Sound on Orcas Island were like John Roderick cult, yeah.
If there's some local cult that's into me, I don't want them to have a casino or something. They just need to have a nice cabin with a view that I can use.
Yeah, there is a local cult devoted to you.
What would you call that?
Pub trivia.
It's true that a lot of pub trivia teams do have Jeopardy themed names.
Yeah,
you're not wrong.
They live in pub trivia stand.
So Prince Philip is, with his, I'm sure with his usual unenlightened ideas about native cultures, I'm sure he has some remarks about this bizarre thing, but he's very flattered. And when the resident commissioner says, they'd love a picture of you, he sends a signed portrait.
Oh, but not of himself in a grass skirt, because that would be very Prince Philip too, right? Coconut bra.
No, he's it's a curiosity for him that this village is into him. He's signing photos all the time.
Right.
Why not get one of these to the village of Yaonanan? So he sends them a signed picture, and this immediately becomes the most
venerated artifact,
magic-laden item in the village, because they have a picture now, and he knows about them. That's the main thing.
Right.
He's acknowledged their existence, and this confirms all their customs about him. And they want to send a gift of their own, so they send a nal, which is a pig-killing club.
Okay.
That the tribe, it's the best thing they can think of.
Well, it's the best thing he could think of, probably.
He is very excited. And they want to make sure it gets to him. So they say, can you make sure that Prince Philip gets to use the nal,
To kill a pig.
They are imagining that he would want to kill a pig just like they would with a nal. But it's a ceremonial item as well.
The last time I went to East Sound on Orcas Island, I went to the hardware store and I bought a Japanese tree pruning saw. It was a fancy hardware store. Fancy saw.
What makes it? It's just of Japanese manufacture, or is
Japanese,
it a different design?
It's a different design. It's kind of a curved, almost like a scimitar, but small. And you're meant to prune your cherry trees with it.
I've seen those. Does it have the long handle or not?
Yeah, medium handle. And now I think of it as a gift from the people of East Sound.
I thought you were going to say the people of Japan.
No, I feel like I'm going to confine the cult to a regional town.
Are you going to send them a picture of you trimming your brush with it?
Yeah, I am trimming my bush with it.
Yeah, or even the plants out back. Either way. And Prince Philip is happy to oblige, so he poses with the Nal Club and sends it back via the colonial government.
Yeah,
and of course the village of Yaonanan is now even happier.
Sure,
because they can confirm that Philip did indeed get the gift, and he's wielding it. He's still connected to
part of his new ceremonial uniform,
to his native culture. John Niva, the guy who saw him on the deck of the ship, is now the chief of the village, and he creates a shrine where all the over the years a couple more photos get sent. So this village now has a handful of Philippiabilia that they can display in this in their holiest spot, this grass shack. And
is it a little grass shack that sits way back?
I would guess it's not way back at all. I guess it's front and center.
Oh, you don't think it's 25 feet from the railroad track?
There are, and the village is all converted at this point. The rising generation now knows nothing but a world where Prince Philip, one of the world's most powerful men, uses a Nal Club from this very village. So there are now thousands of Prince Philip movementarians in Yaonanan. Over the years, they become convinced, the stories that they're told, he doesn't come back. So the stories.
Oh, that's kind of a bummer.
Well, Jesus hasn't come back either yet.
Well,
and,
true.
And, Christianity's doing great.
Did he ever send a shipping container full of peaches? That would have been a nice gesture. It's more than Jesus ever did.
No, he doesn't appear to put himself out too much. And maybe that's the dignity of his office. He's the Duke of Edinburgh. A small village somewhere seems weirdly, but it's the same way you might treat your weirdest fans. Like if they send an SASE, you'll send the signed photo of you with the gift.
I
but
won't.
You don't want to encourage them too much.
I hate going to the mailbox. Otherwise, I would.
It might be something like that.
People do that all the time. Hey, will you send me a copy of this? And I'm like, I just am never going to do that. I don't have the ability. As you know, I'm very challenged in some small segments of life. And if I were Prince Philip, I would have somebody to do it for me. I would say, send this person a T-shirt with a picture on it.
I would imagine that his advisors in the palace are the ones telling him, please do not encourage this. The last thing we need is this to be a story in the Sun.
Right.
Or
with you sending your used panties down there.
That's exactly it. So he's walking a fine line of presumably enjoying the odd attention, but also, not wanting to make it the centerpiece of his consortship or whatever he has, dukedom. Right. But the story, so he never returns. So the stories on the island adapt to the fact that their God, their spirit, their great spirit is not coming back. Presumably he's doing other work over there. They see pictures of Obama and they are so grateful that Prince Philip has arranged to put a black person in the White House.
Oh, well done, Prince Philip.
Look at the kind of work he's doing to put people of color into prominent positions.
Yeah, thanks.
In his faraway part of the world. They believe it becomes part of their, you can tell at this point they have more contact with the outside world because they're vaguely aware of larger forces, even though they keep their ways separate. When it's reported that Osama bin Laden has been killed, they assume Prince Philip was responsible.
Perhaps not wrong.
So it's true that it is disputed who fired the shot. Do you think it might have been Prince Philip?
Or maybe Prince Philip gave the order.
Or
I don't ask who gave the order.
It could just be a SEAL Team 6 member very inspired by Prince Philip's bravery and dignity, and without that example, he could not have brought bin Laden down.
Right.
We don't know.
Maybe they lured bin Laden with a can of peaches and they didn't tell us about it.
Or first season of The Crown on DVD. Oh, it wouldn't have been out yet. So the idea kind of becomes that white culture sucks. White culture has ruined our island, but Prince Philip is bravely in a faraway capital just fighting against all this white stupidity with the hallmarks of Tana culture, which he has brought to them.
His pig beating club.
He's got the club. What else do you need? A 2007 reality show by the British TV folks at Channel 4, I think called Meet the Natives, brought 5... I know, right?
Wow. All right. Meet the Natives.
You winced a little at Meet the Natives, and I think you were correct to do so. Brought 5 people from Tana to London.
Oh, that must have been a pretty cool airplane flight.
Sure.
I would have liked to have sat next to them or behind them.
And a visit. Can you imagine the kind of the Crocodile Dundee fun you would have every day as these guys ride on their first escalator or Ferris wheel or tube ride? And they were allowed a visit with the Duke of Edinburgh, although it didn't happen on camera.
Oh, that's too bad.
So the show covers their fascination with his Royal Highness. Is the consort his Royal Highness?
Yeah, I believe so.
I'm not actually sure about that.
Riding the tube is scary, even having ridden all the subways of the world. I can't imagine going into it from Tana.
There's a gap, and they don't know how to mind it.
Oh, right. How are you going to mind the gap if you don't even know what a gap is?
Presumably, they were briefed. So they were able to meet with Prince Philip, which must have been mind-blowing for them.
Yeah.
Imagine, is there someday going to be a reality show that lets
5 Mormons meet Jesus?
5 Christians meet Jesus. He hasn't come back yet, but he's got some time this afternoon.
Yeah, here he is.
And so they came home to Tana and reported that he had left them the cryptic message, "When it turns warm, I will send a message."
Oh, boy.
And you have to wonder what kind of odd thing
He's
Prince Philip said.
QAnon. That's what it is. He's Q.
He must have said something like that. "Oh, I'd love to visit your island some
Yeah, some summer day.
Or, when it's winter here, I'd love to come to your balmy shores." He said something like that, and they return home and tell the village, "Good news, guys. He's brought us a message. When it turns warm, I will send a message."
There were still Concords then. He could have made that trip.
Why didn't he? Would it have killed him?
Yeah.
I mean, I know he had some pheasants to hunt and possibly a government biology lab to open. But come on.
It's not like he didn't own a linen suit.
There's a great story of him in Canada saying, "I am proud to open this thing, whatever it is," which really sums up the whole Prince Philip of Mountbatten approach to life right there.
Yeah,
right?
That's like Paul Stanley saying, "Good night, Cleveland," when he's in New Orleans.
Now, sadly, Prince Philip had some health challenges in his last years, mostly because he was 170 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2021, when he was early this year when he was hospitalized, a director of the Vanuatu Cultural Center realized, I'm gonna have to let the boys know.
Oh dear!
So he has the sad assignment of heading out into the jungle to the village of Yao Nanen and telling the folks, "Hey, I've got some bad news about Prince Philip. He's in the hospital."
Is he meant to be immortal? He's not, right? Isn't he?
Well, he
a mortal god.
He's a mountain spirit.
Sure.
So I guess the legend has the flexibility to cut both ways. It can, just like our flying saucer friends from 1950s era Chicago. Maybe it has enough give to accommodate a Prince Philip who can get sick or die, but certainly they're not happy about it.
I always tell the women I date that I am a lesser god, for sure.
A demigod?
Yeah, a demigod. Somebody that that wanders the earth. I'm like the god of a valley or of a spring. But bigger god than the god
Why
of
are
a
you
spring.
wandering so much then? You seems like you would stick with your totemic waterfall or whatever it
I
is.
wander around the valley. It's a big enough valley that there's room for me to, kind of wander.
Is this that valley out back of your new house?
No, it's bigger than that.
Are you the god of that little ravine?
Well, I guess I've been confined to that ravine as time's gone on.
Oh, you're like Lucifer.
Yes.
You've been trapped there. You've been cast down.
Sent down to the valley of Normandy Creek. Yeah, it's a little bit of a drag, but I've been greeted with a lot of eye rolling in my life. I mean, so much that I feel people don't take me seriously.
You do have the option maybe of doing some brave deeds that would restore you to whatever size valley you think you merit.
I've done a lot of brave deeds, but none of them have been on television.
Have you done any brave deeds?
Well, how would you know?
What brave deeds would you claim?
Only the gods are witness to my brave deeds.
I see. Are they internal? Are they maybe a struggle you had?
No, I'm down there moving rocks around. I'm like a freaking Hercules down there.
In that valley, I see.
Yeah, I mean,
you have really reshaped that ravine.
Yeah, well, don't tell the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Well, you've got your. I will not. They would not look kindly on your Japanese tree pruner for one thing.
No, that's right. I would be in violation of the U.S. Clean Water Act.
That's cargo. So in April of this year, Prince Philip passed on, and when word reached the village, there are still hundreds of devoted followers of Prince Philip and his divine mission there. So they were just grief stricken. It was as bad as it can get. There was moaning and wailing, and many pigs were sacrificed for a ritual feast.
That was true here too.
Oh, sure. Is that what you did when Prince Philip died?
Yeah, I sacrificed 15 pigs. If by sacrificing 15 pigs you mean eating 15 ham sandwiches.
I did that when Bowie died. And, and this, you may have seen this kind of, the cult had, this particular cargo cult had, only been in the public eye as kind of a trivia fact for a long time. But now it was mentioned in a lot of the stories about Prince Philip's funeral. Hey, weirdly, did you know he was a god to a couple hundred people 8,000 miles away? And so journalists followed up with the village and asked them what the future of the Prince Philip movement is. What would you do if you were a believer in Prince Philip? How would you adapt your beliefs to the current moment?
Double down on it, right? I mean, that's what the Christians did.
Now he's in heaven fighting for the village.
I mean, one of the reasons the Bible was written when it was 60 to 100 years later is that for the first 40 years after Jesus died, the people just assumed he was on his way back.
Any day now.
He was supposed to be back like within a year, and then it's 2 years. No point in writing these stories down. You're just talking to a group of people that are kind of milling around waiting for Jesus. So by the time Mark got around to writing the book down,
I guess we got to write this down in case it's a while.
Sure. I mean, it might be. I'm starting to forget some of these stories.
Suddenly, there's a bunch of new guys who don't remember the stories and never met the original guys.
Right. And then Matthew and Luke were like, I've got, I've heard all these other stories. We should write those down too.
It's just like third generation members of the Temptations or something.
Right. And then John was like, no. I've got some stories. Yeah, that's what they should do. They should write the book of Philip.
Well, these guys had an option that the early Christians never did because Philip had a lot of well-publicized offspring.
Oh, sure. I know them. I know some of them.
Sure. You mentioned earlier that he was a terrible father and made Prince Charles go to the gloomiest private school in all England.
But there was the one that was a Harrier pilot who ended up being a sex criminal.
Sure.
What about the,
we all love Prince Andrew, the world's greatest Harrier pilot and sex criminal.
So what happened? Which lucky kid got the nod?
They decided that Prince Charles was now their new god.
I thought it was going to be Princess Anne. Somebody with bring a little bit of freshness to
Maybe they don't have the most enlightened views on gender in the town of Yaonan. I'm not really sure.
Maybe we should start a cult to Princess Anne, although that might be weird too.
Well, I mean, all the places it's practical. All the places on Vanuatu that would have had adoring pictures and engravings of Queen Elizabeth, many with Prince Philip, are soon going to have pictures of Prince Charles, presumably. Unless he abdicates.
He does seem, I guess, the most Philippine of the
Oh, you don't mean related to the islands?
No, but
you mean
like
Philippian?
Philippine. Well, what?
The Book of Philippians?
No, isn't that like a circus manual? No, you'd say Philippine, wouldn't
Sure.
you? Yeah. Sure. I mean, he's got the ears. He's got
the ears. He's got the nose.
He's never going to be. He's basically been married to a powerful woman, and never going to be the king. So
he married a powerful woman that he could get rid of, unlike his
sadly.
dad, and go back to his first love.
Although his powerful wife still overshadows him, I think.
I wonder what they think about Camilla on the island of Tana. I'm not really sure. Do you think they get the crown? Do they have Netflix? No, they've resisted all technology.
Maybe they just get the queen. And that concludes the Prince Philip movement. Entry 987.PS8207. Certificate number 50227 in the omnibus. Futurelings, in the unlikely event that social media still exists in your era, you can find Ken Jennings all over the internet, like Prince Philip all over Micronesia.
You can find all my various cargo cults worldwide.
That's right.
I do have a friend in New Zealand who was like, I just turned on TV the other day and you were hosting Jeopardy. So maybe I am going to get my first Melanesian cargo cult.
What are you going to bring to the people of Melanesia that will make you want to come back?
What do they not have yet? Dippin' Dots?
The ice cream of the future.
They don't have it yet, probably because it's in the future.
There you go.
I can be the time traveler that introduces them to...
We want Dippin' Dots. Come back.
I'll come out of a phone booth like George Carlin and give them Dippin' Dots.
You can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/John Roderick. You can email the Omnibus Project at gmail.com, the Omnibus Project at gmail.com. And you can support this show. Your generous contributions at patreon.com/Omnibus Project help us produce the show. And also at the varying levels of contribution, of support for the show, there are lots and lots of cool prizes.
We'll make it worth your while. We
Super
promise.
prizes. We'll send you our handwritten show notes. You can suggest a show. We'll actually get on a Zoom call with you if you so desire.
John will not go to his mailbox to send you his undies.
It's very hard to do.
But we will get on Zoom with you.
I'll get on the computer and talk to you for a full, 49 minutes.
Whatever the free Zoom length is. 48 minutes or something.
You can seek out other Futurelings by putting the word Futurelings into the internet and going whichever direction you choose. There are no other Futurelings but the Omnibus Futurelings. We have taken over the space, as they say, commanded the space. And you can mail us actual things, including whatever pig-whacking clubs your culture uses, to P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155.
Listeners, from our vantage point, here in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We can't last that much longer without Prince Philip. I don't know how we've done it so far. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. If the worst comes soon, however, this recording, like all our recordings, may be our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.